Welcome back to another episode of BHAW Radio. We've got a special episode tonight. This is a surprise. Jordan doesn't know what's happening right now. He thinks this is a Coach Word update, but we're doing Jordan's episode tonight. So we're at episode 57. We got a guest host, Mike Gorman, knows Jordan very well. We have a vivid group text together. This is Chasing Greatness. Shout out to the group text. But vibrant. Jordan, any words before we do your formal introduction?
I'm not prepared, but we'll make it work.
Yeah, this is the epitome though of the show.
Let's do it live.
This is what it's all about. So for listeners out there who don't know Jordan's background, Jordan's a 2013 graduate, two-time NCAA qualifier. Recently got out of the Army, moved back to Ohio, Cincinnati native now. Welcome to the show, Jordan.
Thanks, guys.
Dude, this was so hard to keep it a surprise. Especially like the last 5 minutes.
I am surprised. See what happens. Ooh. See what you guys got drawn up.
I don't know what's better right now. The throwback sweater with the fuzzy Army A. Those were rare back in the day. Or the retro hair, the Flowmaster, the lettuce coming out the back. That's some like Blacksboro level pearls.
Got a trim job too, believe it or not. This is a fresh trim job. And this sweatshirt was a gift from Mr. Hall. Shout out Mr. Hall. I did not take it. He said I could have it. So appreciate that.
Does it have the little zipper up in here? Is that the one?
It does.
So that jacket, that was the official first cool thing that I think the Army Wrestling's ever had. We got that my yuck year. And
right
Chuck.
Here, the iPod cord. Small enough that you could fit maybe an iPod mini in it. That's about it.
So Chuck said, hey, at the end of the season, everybody was giving them back. I mean, you're cutting weight in those things all year. So nobody turned them in. He brought everybody into everybody who got one. He brought them all into a room. And he was like, hey man, you got to turn in your sweatshirts. He made us all turn them in, but there's
those back. Money's tight, guys. We're going to need those back. Just give them a good cleaning. Mr. Hall, clean them up.
Don't feel as bad now that they got the rebrand. They don't need them no more, so it's all good.
Well, enough about the sweatshirts. Let's dive into Jordan.
Let's do it.
All right, so
where do we want to start?
Let's start current life. You know, what are you doing right now? What's the last couple of weeks been? You know, you've moved away from the podcast a little bit. You know, if the listeners have seen some editing issues, that's because I've been doing all of that as of late. But Jordan taught me it, so it's kind of still his fault both ways. But so what have you been up to?
Well, the grasshopper never is as good as the sensei, so we'll get you there. I've been busy, man. It's been a crazy year for me, getting out of the Army, obviously, and moving. I got 2 young kids and a wife, so that keeps me obviously very busy. My youngest daughter has got some medical conditions that are required to get some surgeries on a cleft lip, which, has just kept us busy. She's got a lot of appointments she got to go to and stuff like that. So we're dealing with that. But a lot of things to be thankful for, a lot of blessings. Got a great church we're part of here. I live down the road from my parents, which I couldn't be more excited about. And I work in supply chain at Kroger now. So quickly becoming a grocery guy. I know too many obscure facts about the foods in the produce aisle, so it's all good.
Are you involved in any of the someone was like either sent me an article or told me something like how like grocery stores they're placed, like things are placed in certain spots, like all the convenient things that you need are like in the back corner, so you have to go through the whole rest of the grocery store. Are you involved in any of that scheme?
Nah, that's definitely a scheme, but I'm not a part of it. So I'm working on a new Kroger initiative where we're doing home delivery. So you can have your,
New scheme. Okay.
New scheme. Yeah, new scheme. And so if you want your groceries brought to your doorstep, we can make that happen now, which is picked by robots in a automated fulfillment center. So cutting edge stuff.
Well, this is not a Kroger sponsored episode in case they, anybody was worried about that. They do not fund us at all.
that sounded really polished. Like you had pitched that to the boss like last week. It's fresh off the mind, came off the tongue, rolled off real nicely.
Yeah, I've rehearsed it a few times.
How will it compete with I've seen some videos of Amazon stores with like the whole checkout as you go. Obviously this is home delivery, but I'm assuming if you come up with this and Kroger starts to kill it, Amazon's going to come and slash through some of that, the new scheming, that the JT scheme. How do you see Amazon competing with your new idea?
Well, Amazon's got the partnership with Whole Foods already, so
Hmm.
you can get groceries through Whole Foods, but everything you order through them is picked at an actual local store and shipped to you. So it's not as fresh as the Kroger. We got that seal, that fresh seal on there. That's our promise. So the key is we're saying we're gonna get it to you faster, and it's gonna be inside of a warehouse, for a minimal amount of time, less than everybody else. So you should get a fresher product, more accurately get what you want. So if you order 100 items, we're gonna get you 98. That's our promise.
Hmm. You're taking farm to table to the next level.
Something like that.
The Kroger way.
F2T.
Baby.
F2T.
All right, so now we know what you're up to. Now we're gonna take it back. So we've had a lot of brothers on here in the past, duos, the ones we've had your brother on. We kind of did a brother episode with him. I tried to surprise you guys with Randall. It didn't work as great as this surprise, but I think a lot of listeners know your story of going to West Point. Did you ever think about going anywhere else? Your brother's there 2 years ahead of you. What other schools were you looking at? What was the recruiting process for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult, right? Because you want to be with your family. You want to continue the traditions and the things that you've been doing for many, many years, right? And so we were fortunate to be a part of a really great high school program. So, wrestling together was something our family did, something that we wanted to continue to do, but I wasn't sold on the military piece of West Point. So I was definitely exploring every option that I had. My senior year didn't shake out how I necessarily thought it would. Not that it mattered anyway. I'd already kind of made my decision before then, but I didn't know what I didn't know, right? I think every kid thinks that if you've had some level of success that college coaches are going to come knocking down your door, and that's just not necessarily the case for everybody. So, I was exploring even some D2 options. Coach Tim Durnlin was somebody that had done a lot of camps at our high school. He was a great Christian man, and he was coaching at Ashland University in Ohio. So I visited there and, I had talked to other coaches and some different things, but at the end of the day, right? I mean, how can you pass up on an opportunity like West Point? It's best education you can get, leadership experience. You're going to have a great job afterwards with great experience being an Army lieutenant. So all the things that we all know now, right? But you don't know those things when you're 18 years old. And so definitely my dad kind of guided me in the direction that was probably best for me. But yeah, it was definitely not something I was sold on even up to probably the first 2 years. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I kind of took the whole experience as I can go for the first 2 years. And if it's something that I want to reevaluate at that point, then I have the opportunity to do so. I mean, looking back, obviously I made the best choice going and staying, and I would tell that to any kid, obviously, but I think everybody's got to make that decision for themselves, right? Based on their individual circumstances and their family dynamic and all the different things that they want for their life, not just during their college experience, but post college, right? So it was a great choice for me. It was a hard choice, but I'm thankful that I made it.
Do you think you've been close with your older brother Casey for your entire lives? Especially, I think wrestling brings brothers even closer together than if you played different sports or whatever. Do you remember what you were thinking when he found out that he was going to go? Like when West Point first came into the household, where you were still years away from getting recruited there, but do you remember your initial impression from that perspective, the younger brother perspective?
Yeah, vaguely. I think my dad told a story when he was on whatever episode that was, but my brother went out for the camp, and I think we did we went up and just checked it out on our own as a family and did like a New York City trip. And I was like, dude, that's crazy. You don't want to do that. I think we've come a long way in the way that we market our program and the things that we, how we advertise ourselves, and not just from a wrestling perspective, right? But the opportunity that is West Point and afterwards. And obviously that point in time was like relatively close to 9/11 and all the things were going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. So as a young kid, you don't really know any different than what the movies and TV shows you. So you're just like, I don't want to do that. So yeah, my initial reaction when Casey went there was like, all right, we'll see how this goes, I guess.
Well, I mean, and it may have not impacted at all, but the 2008, 2009 season, they had a really, really good EIWA. I think they took 30 IWAs, was the best they had done before, kind of like the new era. That was, Casey's senior year. He's coming to West Point. Did you think about, wow, this program's on the up and up? Like, were you paying attention to that at all, or?
There was two things that I remember. One, I was obviously there for all the different marquee moments of my brother's first 2 years, right? So I remember our day, and I remember watching the parade, and I remember watching just him talk to Dean Geyer, who was a Cincinnati native, man of Moeller. Shout out Dean. And they were talking all this Army lingo, and as a 16-year-old kid, I just thought it was cool, right? They were probably spouting off stuff from their knowledge book or something, like a bunch of nerds, but I thought they were cool, right? And so I remember seeing how close he was to his teammates, and I was like, all right, this is neat, right? And I remember going the next year during the season that you're referencing to the IWAs and watching all those guys qualify and compete, and also sitting in the stands next to them and just kind of inundating myself with the team from afar and seeing how close everybody was to each other as brothers was definitely something that was super attractive.
Solid stuff. So moving into kind of, and I just kind of thought about this, like you had a really bad injury, kind of messed up your senior year of high school. Do you feel like that helped you kind of have kind of a jumpstart year into your plebe year, doing well, they're more hungry? Or you think maybe that was just, just kind of your transition?
I don't know. It depends who you ask. I didn't think anything of it at the time. My dad would probably, or my high school coach would say something different and say I had something to prove, right? Or I had a chip on my shoulder and I was trying to kind of maybe make up for some lost goals that I had from being injured going through the postseason my senior year. But I wasn't really looking at it that way. I was looking at my plebe year as I have nothing to lose. No one knows who I am. I got a lot of tricky things that I do in my wrestling style. And so if they are not aware of that, then it's going to be very difficult to compete with me. And so I was just having fun, right? I was leaving post and going to tournaments with my friends and having a good time. So I don't know if it had any impact. Maybe it did subconsciously, but I wasn't actively thinking about it.
Gotcha. When you talk about you're having a lot of fun at tournaments, is that when you caught Dick Starks in the lie and you told me at 24 hours?
That was that's a funny story. So I was already hurt at that point. So I got hurt my senior year of high school, and I got hurt my plebe year at the Southern Scuffle. I actually had the same injury that Thomas Gilman had. So side note, don't know how that dude competed in the Olympics with a Lisfranc fracture. Like, seems literally impossible. Because that thing plagued me for a year, and I still have, issues with it. But they took me to the IWA tournament, which I think was a great call by Coach Barbie at the time. He wanted me to be able to see the tournament and just be a part of the team still, because I was definitely down and out and feeling sorry for myself. And so getting to go watch everybody and definitely my brother and see my parents that weekend was great for me. But yeah, we stopped at Subway on post on the way out, and Dick got a bottle of like Sprite or Powerade, whatever it was, right? And he drank it all while we were at the restaurant, and he filled it back up in the fountain machine. And it could have been water for all I don't know, right? But we got on the bus, and he was the regimental sergeant major of the Corps Cadets. And so I was just kind of rusing him, giving him a hard time. And I'm like, hey, Sergeant Major Starks, did you pay for that refill? Or was that a single bottle that you purchased? He's like, yeah, I filled it up. I'm like, Looked at my watch, looked at Coach Wilman, and I said, that's an hour violation. You got 24 hours. And every like 4 or 5 hours, I'm like, 18 hours, Richard, from the back of the bus. And he got pretty upset. Thankfully, everybody else thought it was pretty funny. But Dick, if you hear this, I'm sorry, because you were probably cutting weight, and I was a immature 18-year-old. So
that could really backfire. Like you hear those stories where like you're playing a joke, but some other kid on the team could have been like really
misconstrued it, yeah,
and like turned it in, and then Dick would have been like, "Hey, it was just water," and then it would have been a whole investigation.
I'm glad it didn't come to that. That's a funny story.
Mike, you got a question?
No, I was just thinking about B-Row. You probably know the story. I don't know it, but what was the mouth like the desert? When you said Richard Starks, I just thought about the mouth was like the desert. Was it related to that? I know he was like cutting hard to get to 97, but I couldn't remember if that was a different tournament or what that was.
I thought that was Kyler.
Sounds like something Kyler would say.
No, I think it was like, oh wait, I think he was complaining about cutting weight to like Whit Dunning, or somebody was cutting like really hard. And like, I mean, maybe you're cutting weight, but you're a 97 pounder. Like, you know, you're not really like, maybe you are really like, a lot of people are like, some 97 pounders are cutting weight, but like, I don't think he was really cutting that hard, where, you know, you have the 25 pounders out there. You know, you had like Nando coming down from like 155 to make 125 and never complaining once about it. And then it got, I don't remember the exact scenario of it, but I remember somebody being really upset that someone else was upset about their mouth being so thirsty.
Nothing like the heavyweights and the big guys trying to act like they're struggling.
So moving into your yuck year, and as I was going through this, so I'm looking through all these results. I'm going through like EIWAs, all your years, NCAAs, and I'm like, this was like a phase in my life where I didn't follow wrestling much at all. And I'm looking through this, and I'm like, wait, this guy won EIWAs at your weight? I'm like, I don't even know who this name is, which is kind of like, it really surprises me now, but I really had to do my homework on this because I did not know a lot of the stuff. I saw, you know, I watched your match against Ben Cash from Iowa State. You know, Iowa State could have a guy like that out in their starting lineup, but they did. Shots fired at Cash. But
it wasn't that he was bad. I was just that much better.
And I was watching because I didn't know all that. You've talked a lot about your tricks and like the things you do. And I was like, okay, I want to watch this match because he pinned him and see like where your trickery was. There's some trickery, but you did hit a high crotch in the match, which I didn't know.
That was a good solid match for me. That was a fundamental match. There's some others out there, right, that I fall to pieces, which is most of the ones on the internet.
So let's talk about your rise a little bit. You know, as a yearling, you come in, you have a really solid season. I think you won like 27 matches, you know, your yuck year. Was it just like, you know, coming back from the, you know, maybe because you only wrestled the first half of your plebe year, the trickery was still there because a lot of people didn't know who you were. And that's why you were successful, you know, or, you know, I'll let you talk and let me shut up.
I'd say two things. I mean, one, when I got injured, like I said, it was a really significant injury, and I wasn't able to do anything the entire summer. I didn't go to Buckner with my classmates. I went home for the entire summer, which was could have been bad, but it ended up being good. They wanted to send me home for a semester and have me be a December grad. But like I said before, I wasn't, you know, kind of sold on the experience yet. My dad told Coach Barbie, if you send the kid home, he's probably not going to come back. So I kind of powered through, and it was a really difficult semester for me, just academically and emotionally and all those different things. I was on some significant painkillers, and and all that. So I ended up going home. I was super out of shape. I'd been on crutches for like 7 months and done nothing but eat Cheez-Its and drink 2 24-ounce Mountain Dews per day for the last 6 months. So the state of my body was not great. So I ended up just basically working out and living at home all summer, rehabbing my foot and my ankle. And I came back in pretty good shape. So that was good for me from not just a physical standpoint, but like a mental standpoint too. And then I don't know. I mean, I had a good season. There's still a lot to learn. That was Coach Heskett's first year. He was trying to teach me some new fundamentals and some different things, which I was definitely slow to learn because I'm probably a little bit on the stubborn side when it came to my wrestling style. But there were some things that I definitely incorporated into my game that were beneficial to me. And having Coach Mischief there was great. Good training partner, good encourager, and just like, man, he beat the crap out of us for sure. So those were all positive things that probably attributed to me having a better season than my plebe year. And then obviously once you get some momentum going, your confidence is rolling and you're feeling good, then you just got to ride that high. So, I mean, yeah, I felt good about the season. It was my best DIWA finish. Maybe not necessarily the toughest bracket as some of the other years, but I mean, I felt good about it. I had some good wins against some good opponents, and overall, it was a good year. I mean, I think one of the things that probably hurt me my next 2 years is, to your point, yeah, there was some unique things that I did that people didn't know about my first 2 years, because who's scouting some non-state champ from Army West Point at the time? Probably not very many people. Now we got nothing but, murders row all the way up and down the lineup, so they're going to know who people are, but they didn't know who I was at the time, right? And once they were able to maybe scout some of those things that I did, right, my junior, senior, no one's got to pick bottom, right? That's just a small example. So, yeah, I was kind of unknown and off the scene my yuck year for sure.
I remember that your yuck year, you were on fire. I don't remember a particular match, but there was a moment where I think we just sort of looked back and we're like, man, I don't think JT's lost in like a couple of weeks. Do you have a moment where you were like, no, this was the turning point where maybe you had, taken off some of the dust of missing plebe year, and then, the chip is off your shoulder from Troy Christian state title run, and you were just like, you know what, this is who I am now. This is the future. This is I've arrived and I belong here, kind of thing.
I mean, I think I always felt that way, but I got a lot of confidence at the Southern Scuffle. I wrestled several Big Ten opponents. I think at one point I wrestled 3 Minnesota guys in a row. So Jay Robinson was not very happy at the time, right? Getting 3 L's in a row, one of which was one of the Thorne brothers, which he was ranked at the time. So that was a good win. I think I had 1 or 2 other kind of ranked type wins at that tournament. So definitely that was a big confidence builder. But yeah, I mean, I had a good season. I was feeling good. I was also managing my weight really well, which was definitely not something I did as well in my final 2 years. But I think I was right in that sweet spot of where my size was and my ability to manage it, versus I grew a little bit my last 2 years and just didn't do it as well.
So kind of, after your yuck year, before you started your Cal year, how much did the decision weigh on you as it got closer to the first day of school to like, was I going to do that? Or as it got closer, it was kind of like it subsided a little bit?
Are you talking in reference to just like making my decision to affirm and stay at West Point, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember having conversations with my dad and my mom and probably even my brother, but definitely my dad, right? Is somebody I always go to for advice. And so because I missed Buckner as a yuck with all my classmates, I had to go back as a yearling and do it as a squad leader, which would count as both my leadership, detail, in addition to, going through Buckner as a rising yearling. So I ended up being out there for like, I don't even remember how long. They did things different back then than they do now. I think we were out there for a really long time, and Jimmy Rafferty gets another shout out, as he does every episode, but he was doing that detail as well. And he was the barracks, building right up the hill from me. So we got a lot of quality time together and did some training sessions in between, like lifting and stuff in between. And he was even teaching me some Army stuff too. I mean, I remember doing the land nav course. God bless my soul, I was not good at it. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I will follow you tomorrow. I already, passed or whatever. I'll follow you and just see how you do. I was like, okay, that sounds great. Thinking like, my teammate, my homeboy is going to help me out, make sure I get through this. No. I'd be like getting ready to walk off the cliff. And Jimmy's like, you sure you want to go that way, bud? And I'm like, yeah, this is the direct path, bro. He's like, okay, Ranger. And I would go down I'd go down the mountainside just like a big dummy. But I had a good experience, being in a leadership, air quotes, position and going through some of that Army training. I remember the officer that was in charge of my company was a Green Beret major, and he was super intense. So he had a very like wrestling type mentality. And I liked all those things, right? So those helped me make my decision a couple months later when it was time to raise the right hand and do the affirmation. I felt good about it, that it was a good decision, and it was something I would not only enjoy, but be good at.
Did the coaching change have any impact on you? Like when you, obviously Barbie recruited you and then Heskett came in, what was your thought? You mentioned a couple of things about wrestling style and adding things to the kit bag from the affirmation side, or just training under Heskett. Did that play any role in that?
Not my decision to stay or had I chosen to go. I don't think it had an impact there, but from a wrestling standpoint, I was stoked, right? I remember all of us kind of being on pins and needles when we were trying to figure out who the next coach was going to be. When Coach Heskett was announced, I was like, all right, Ohio native, used to coach at Ohio State. I actually probably was one of his first, if not first, interaction with a West Point cadet. My dad had some contact with the Ohio State coaching staff from just living in the area and being a prominent high school coach. And so he reached out and was like, hey, Jordan's is home this whole summer because I was off for my foot injury. And so I went up to Ohio State one afternoon. So hopefully this isn't an NCAA violation, but I think we're outside of the
24 hours.
Yeah, we're outside of the statute of limitations at this point, right? It's 2021. But me and Coach Heskett had a workout, and I was super out of shape still back then. So I think he was like, what in the world is going on with this kid, But I remember him just being like super fired up, talking about some of his vision already and things that he wanted to do, and asking me some preliminary questions about what it's like to be a cadet and what are some of the challenges and experiences and the things that we go through. And so, man, I was really fired up to go back to school. So those things, in that sense, I guess to your question, Mike, yeah, it made going back as a yearling exciting, where probably I wouldn't have been as excited.
So moving into your Cal year, you come into your groove. I think you had a 30-win season. Threw together a few wins in NCAAs. Talk about your Cal year, maybe some of the struggles, cutting weight. I know, kind of when I was thinking about this episode and kind of topics we talk about, I figured, cutting weight would be like a big-ish topic because, nowadays people are just a lot healthier with nutrition and how they go about cutting weight and don't, frankly, just don't cut as much. Talk to us a little bit about, some of that adversity and kind of leading into your junior year.
Yeah. I mean, as my first 2 years, my brother was 141, I was 133. So my option to move up from a standpoint of I couldn't beat him was limited. And two, I wouldn't want to do that. Right. So I think the next 2 years, it was like, hey, how can I do this and still remain successful? Being an NCAA qualifier as a sophomore was a big motivator for like, hey, getting there is step one. Winning matches and getting on the podium is the next step. And so how do I do that? Some of the things that I got to do is obviously get better at wrestling, but I got to get better at how I manage this weight thing. So I did all kinds of weird stuff. I mean, I don't know how far we want to go into it. I'm not necessarily know if I want to, right? They're not great stories. If I had to do it all over again, I would move up at some point. But I guess 2020 hindsight is kind of at play, because you could say, hey, you were an NCAA qualifier as a junior too at 133. So why make changes your senior year? But I think from a mental standpoint, right, I was pretty burnt out from just the process that was cutting weight. I probably didn't do it. I know I didn't do it the healthiest way or the most methodical way or planned out way. In my mind, I did. But knowing what we all know now, I think, definitely moving up would have been better for me. There's a team aspect to it that it was best for the team for me to remain there. I know all about being a team player too. So, can't sit here and make excuses at this point. I had opportunities to make changes and do different things. And there was also resources at West Point that I didn't utilize to the, fullest extent, right? There's dietitians there, there's strength and conditioning coaches, there's all these additional resources that I didn't tap into. So, excuse me. It was definitely a challenge. I mean, I'll just say one of the, I guess, stranger things or things people wouldn't know about, I ended up doing a vegan diet for the last 2 years. I had done some research and found that there was a lot of UFC fighters at the time that were doing that. They claimed that it opened up your sweat glands more and increased your metabolism, all these different things. So I did that. That was definitely a challenge. I basically never ate the mess hall. We go up to the commissary every weekend. I had a small George Foreman in my room and a fridge. So sorry, attack officer, I had 2 appliances, but I was, cooking bean burgers and eating vegetable roll-ups and just anything that I could get my hands on and come creative with as far as food, a lot of fruits and vegetables, stuff like that. My junior year, I think it made a big impact. I mean, I felt very energetic. I did a really good job managing it. My senior year, not as much. I still did it, but not to the granular scale that I did, my Cal year. So that was one thing I did that was pretty unique that probably people don't really know about. And it was definitely a challenge as far as resourcing and logistics, being a cadet and just being limited in what's available to you. But yeah, I never missed weight. I made it every time, but it came at the cost of dual meets with a 1 hour turnaround. You weren't going to get the same guy as a tournament with the 2 hour turnaround and, probably a bye or not as quality of opponent first round. So that was kind of the story of my last 2 years, but
Do you remember any one particular cut that just like broke you or made you like really second guess life decisions at that point that sticks out among the masses?
I don't think there's any that stick out in particularly. I'd say every Sunday when I came back, I had this high hope that I would be like in the 140s. When I stepped on the scale and saw something that started with a 1.5 and I'll leave for the last digit off, right? I would just almost rip the door off of a bathroom stall. Like I start crying and just hysterically going nuts, right? But I do remember in Columbia, I think this is the famed dual meet where my dad almost got kicked out for yelling at the ref on the mat. I was like a half a pound over or something, like an hour before Rans. I was freaking out because that's not how I did things. Getting the last pound off was hard. And I remember I like went up to Raph. I was like, I'm not going to make it, dude. Like, I'm flipping done. This is it for me or something. I don't know. And something dramatic probably. And I remember Chandler was trying to cut like the last little bit too, and he's been a big pansy about it. But
Shout out Chandler,
right? He had a little Dick Starks syndrome to him, acted like he was cutting weight. But yeah, I mean, Raph was like, all right, dude, well, like, let's do whatever we got to do to get you down. And he like drilled so hard with me for like 35 minutes in the Columbia wrestling room that I felt like I was going to black out any second, but I lost it. So that was good to know that I could do it if I had to, I guess, right? Because I had it in my mind that if I wasn't stepping into the building on weight, there was no way I was making it. And you know what? That actually reminds me, because I forgot about this. The worst night of my entire life, at least from like a wrestling cutting weight standpoint, was my junior year at NCAAs. I had Logan Stieber in round 2. And so I was like, I'm going to win this match. And so Trick Christian and Monroeville, to bring it all the way back to high school, was a rivalry. So Logan Stieber's high school was Monroeville. They had 4 state champs. Him, his brother, Camp Tassari, and a guy named Chris Phillips. Studs. All of them 4-time state champs. They had one additional state qualifier my senior year, they basically only needed him to win like a match. And mathematically they could beat Trick Christian. Lo and behold, I had a broken ankle. Guess who I have first round? This 5th state qualifier, this kid. I beat him on a broken ankle. And so we end up winning the state title by half a point. So now I got Logan Stieber in the NCAA tournament, round 2, Monroeville, Trick Christian, revitalized rivalry. I'm like, all right, I'm going to beat him, right? Obviously, most people thought I was crazy, but I thought my best chance to do it was to be huge. And so I got big for round 2. And I got pinned in about 30 seconds.
What happened?
I got armbarred. It's a illegal armbar that they don't call on kids that
Don't get me started. You know my buttons. You know that's my button.
Yeah. Anyways, that's besides the point. I for whatever reason, so Derek Stanley was 197 pounder, so I said I'll wait to start cutting weight until we get back to the hotel. Well, I waited 2 more hours until he finally wrestled and we were able to leave, because there was probably certain things that were a part of my weight cutting regime that I didn't want other people to see. And so when I got back to the hotel, I was 144 pounds. I had to make 134 the next morning. It was 10:30 at night. Weigh-ins were at 7 a.m. And I just remember putting my gear on and going and working out and getting 5 pounds off, and then laying down for like 45 minutes, getting back up, losing another 4. And then it was like 3:30 a.m. or something. I was still like 3 pounds over. I was like, all right, I'll set my alarm again and go back down like 5:30 or whatever, which was a couple hours before weigh-ins. And I wasn't confident even at that point. And went back down there again. Like, I had run out of clothes at this point to even like cut weight in. They were all damp. I think I was borrowing clothes from Derek that were like hanging down to my knees. And just went down there. Like, I was super lonely and miserable and probably crying, to be honest. So, but I made it, and I wrestled a great match that first round in the second.
Right off the scale too.
Right off the scale, man. I wrestled awesome with about half hour sleep too. Defied everything I thought as far as sports performance.
So coming into your senior year, and you kind of alluded to some of the things, not as successful of a senior year as your junior year. Cutting weight had a big part to do with that, but anything else you can attribute? Not to bit on a low note, but
it does on a low note. I mean, that's just kind of, it is what it is, right? So I think my head was just in a different area, right? I was looking ahead to life a little bit, looking forward to graduating, moving off my life. Wasn't performing how I wanted to on the wrestling mat. Cutting weight sucked, but that was no different than years before. But when the performance, when you aren't performing on top of that, you really start to get discouraged, right? Like, if you squeak out a couple wins, even if they're ugly, and cutting weight's bad, it's like, all right, I can live with that. But when things aren't going your way, and you got that, man, that's when you find out who somebody really is. And so, it was just a difficult year for me. It didn't end how I wanted. Took me a while to kind of cope with that. But at the end of the day, it's all perspective, right? I'm still healthy to this day. I had a great career, accomplished a lot of things that I wanted to. Sure, there's some things that I didn't accomplish. And if I could go back, I would do some things differently to potentially change the outcome, but that's no way to live. So I ain't gonna live like that. It's just wrestling.
We'll name this
Knowledge,
episode It's Just
knowledge
Wrestling.
bomb there. I like that.
It's just wrestling.
It's just wrestling, man. It's just wrestling. Big part of my life, but it doesn't define who I am. So I'm not gonna let it.
So for all the listeners out there too, you know, some of them may not know, Jordan and his brother both, you know, married their high school sweethearts, 2% club. Is that what it's called? 2% club?
That's right.
What was it like going through the academy, you know, with a girl and girlfriend long distance? Did that play an impact in, some of your decisions, or like, you know, probably it was great to go back for the summer to see her, you know, I spend more time with her, but talk about that a little bit. And then also, you know, kind of, you know, you graduate, you're able to get married, you know, start a family together. There.
Yeah, I mean, people told me I was crazy when I was 18 years old, but so one of the reasons I didn't want to go to prep school, they offered to send me to like a Blair or something like that, some other preparatory school that wasn't USMAPS. I also didn't know what USMAPS was at the time, so no shade at USMAPS, but you don't know what you don't know. One of the things that I didn't want to do that for is because I didn't want to delay my life by an additional year. And, people probably would have called me crazy at the time. And I know definitely some of my friends did that I probably shared these sentiments with at the time. But I wanted to marry my wife, who at the time was my girlfriend. So I was certain of that, even at that time. So obviously going through a long distance relationship was difficult, but more props to her than it is for me. I'm the one going through the grind, and she has probably no concept at the time of what I'm going through, and she's trying to do her best to be supportive, right? But you don't know unless you have been to West Point and went through it, right? What someone is going through. So, my wife is the best. She was supportive for those 4 years, and obviously in my 8 years of service, she was as supportive as you could have asked for, followed me around to all my duty stations, went to all the different events, supported me in any way that she could. So I couldn't be more thankful.
Appreciate sharing that. I follow all her stuff on social media, so I feel like I've met your wife and know your wife super well when I probably don't even really know her at all. Same with your kids too.
Yeah, my kids are hoot.
Mike, you got a question?
Well, one thing I was thinking about was you kind of said on your senior year, you were like looking forward to the next step, and maybe that, like starting your life, whether it was getting married or just becoming an officer and having like a normal lifestyle. Did you have any of that as an officer? You seem to have done a career, made a couple career decisions, and then leaning forward into the civilian life. As we know about the Kroger business, we know about but like take it back to the Army side before the Kroger brainchild came out. What did you do as an officer?
I let out of the bag. Kroger, I think I let too much trade secrets out, but we can edit that out. It's okay. Yeah, I mean, to your point, right? I was careful, and I kind of didn't say it in the sense of wrestling because I didn't want it to sound like an excuse or a distraction, because I don't think that relationships necessarily have to be a distraction. I think that my relationship with my senior year would have been my fiance. I don't think it was a distraction at all. I think it was a benefit. So I was careful that I didn't mention that, but we kind of went there. So I think that it was healthy, right? And there's some other wrestlers that maybe would say different, and some that would agree. For me personally, I mean, I obviously was looking forward to my future life with my wife and doing all those things, but it didn't mean that I wasn't focused on trying to accomplish my goals. So I was careful on how I wanted to say that. As far as my Army career, yeah, I definitely made decisions that I could control to benefit my wife and my kids as much as I could. So my first duty station was in El Paso, Texas, Fort Bliss, Old Ironsides. But that was difficult. It was a rough couple of years, just from a standpoint of we were 23 hours from all of our friends and family in kind of the Midwest region, and plane tickets were very expensive. So it wasn't really something that we were doing at the time. Basically saw everybody like at Christmas and maybe once in the summer. So that was difficult. As soon as I had the option to make some choices for, my family and in regards to like where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do in my career, I made those. So I ended up doing a voluntary transfer out of the armor branch to the Adjutant General Corps.
Oh, there we go.
AG,
all the way.
defend and serve, baby.
Representing.
That's right. Only 2 of all AG officers in Army wrestling history, behind none other than the infamous Brian Rowan. But you're the true OG because you went straight out AG.
I did the commissioning ceremony. Todd Messett, he we had all the wrestlers up there. He's like, this is the first time we've ever had a guy go AG. I'm not sure how proud I am saying that out loud. And I was like, you shouldn't say that out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were the first thoroughbred, but I was the upgraded hybrid model. So, but yeah, that was a weird decision, right? Like I wanted to make a different choice for work-life balance. People definitely had opinions at the time. I was doing well in a cavalry organization, loved it in a lot of ways, but it was very intensive of time. And to be successful, you had to dedicate a lot of time, and knew the kids were on the horizon, or at least something we wanted in our future. So I was like, hey, I got to make a different path here. If I choose to stay in the Army, I'm definitely want to do something different. And if I choose to get out, then this will be a great, I guess, resume builder and have kind of 2 different experiences in the Army. So yeah, I made that choice. That obviously took me in a totally different direction and did provide some additional time with my family. And also got us an opportunity to go to Savannah eventually, where my brother was stationed, which was cool. So got to spend a couple of years with the whole family unit at one duty station, which was pretty awesome.
Just clarify for some of the people who don't know what like the other life could have been. That you obviously you saw what was coming down the long range training calendar. Just to throw out some more Army stuff there.
There you
You were
go.
like, these next couple of years could look a certain way, and I'm not about that life. Just so kind of just briefly touch on like what was that was like in the negative light, and then how did you go about even making that transition for those who might be in a similar boat, stuck in a 3-shot.
Yeah, I mean, to clarify, right? Like, I don't want it to come across as a negative connotation of any in particular branch or duty position or anything like that, because I really did enjoy my time. I guess I'll caveat it all by saying I was an executive officer for 2 separate companies for a total of 27 months, which obviously is a very long time.
Dang.
So that burned me out, right? I was like, man, I don't know if I want to be a company commander. That would have been kind of the next hurdle to jump. I feel like I've, in some ways, already done that. So if you don't have an aspiration to be, a company commander, or at the time, I didn't know if I even wanted to be a major or if I wanted to even stay in the Army. I didn't know, right? But I knew that kind of the career path that was in CAV specifically, and the way that my evaluations were written and the path that I was being directed down by another West Point grad who looked really favorably upon me. I mean, he's a lacrosse player. He's my squadron commander. He's an awesome leader. He had some big aspirations for me, right? So he had kind of crafted my path to be a certain way. And I was like, I'm not sure that's necessarily what I want, right? And I had this conversation with him very openly, candidly, right? But got to a decision point where it's like, I either go to the maneuver captain's career course, and that's the path I take, and it's the path towards being a company commander and all these other things, which I'm not sure about, or I tried to do something different. And what are the options you have to do something different? So if you want to kind of stay in the combat arms space, you're either as a senior lieutenant trying to go to the Ranger Regiment, you're either trying to go to like an SFAB maybe, now that's a thing, or you're trying to go to selection and do the whole SF route. And if you're not doing one of those, then you're kind of limited, right? So you might have an option to do some kind of broadening assignment, but that's only going to be for a small period of time. So your only other option at that point, as far as an actual career path change, is to do a voluntary transfer program. And so they will tell you at the time which branches are essentially overstrength and are letting lieutenants go to other branches and which branches are understrength and are in need of senior lieutenants, junior captains. And so, you know, at the time, if there was multiple choices, I don't know what I would have chosen. But at the time, my only choice was armor was out and AG was in. And so I was very uneasy about the decision, but had some people say, hey, man, sounds like you're kind of unhappy with, you know, where you're at and the way things are going. And doesn't sound like that's your mind's really going to change. So why don't you try this? Worst case scenario, it's, you know, you feel the same way, but at least you tried to control your own destiny and do something different. So after some prayer and a lot of mentorship from different people, that was the decision I made. And it ended up being a great one, right? I got a lot of different experiences, met a lot of great people. And I think from a transition period to civilian life, some of the things that I learned is from like an organizational leadership standpoint and just different things that are not like tactical, benefited me. So
riveting stuff right there with talking the VTIP process. But Mike and I were talking.
People gotta know it.
No, I know. I'm making a joke because Mike and I were talking before this. Like, hey, like it's great to hear everybody's stories, but like, what do people, not necessarily what do they want to know, but how can they take something away from this? And I feel like we'll, you know, rarely talk about the VTIP process, and there's definitely some young lieutenants or, you know, guys getting ready to graduate in the next year, you know, where like they're not enjoying what they're doing after 2 or 3 years, and they think, hey, I like the Army, but I'm stuck in this forever.
Yes.
You know, or just, you know, how to navigate, you know, the circumstance you were in with, you know, squadron commander, a great leader that you like and respect, and, you know, all those things, having those conversations. I mean, there's probably a lot of, you know, officers in your boat who don't have those conversations because they just can't face the man to have that. So they just keep doing their job.
Yeah, I mean, I'll plug the AG Corps. I loved it, right? Like, I know that it's got some connotations to it, but if you're a physically fit and mentally tough person and you want to go break the, you know, the norm and what everybody expects that you're going to be, go be an AG officer. It's awesome. You get a lot of great experiences. There's a lot of great opportunities out there for you. And if you want to go do some cool stuff like BHAW, you can get attached to some really cool units and do the same stuff, right? But you're just going to serve in a different type of capacity. So AG all the way.
AG all the way. Yeah, AG, it definitely gets a lot of flack, but you know, as long as you're a self-confident kind of individual, you can take getting made fun of a little bit. I enjoyed it as well, for the most part.
Yeah, if you got a pair on you, like, man, I was making the S3 captains hold my pocket by week 2, so it's all good.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap this up, we're gonna, you know, shoot fire with a bunch of JT type questions because I want to hear.
Okay.
So it's, you know, yuck year, cow year, you're cutting weight. What's like your go-to jam in the wrestling room? What do you listen to?
On my personal iPod, because I never got the aux cord because that was controlled by Daniel J. Young and Chandler Smith. My personal iPod would have been Skrillex all the way.
What's the one food that,
sorry,
what's the one food that during all your weight cutting so stocked in your fridge when you got out of wrestling?
Like post West Point or like after season?
Ooh, good. Both. What's like the go-to postseason, and then what was the thing? Because there was one thing I remember you talked about all the time. You were like, when I have my own house and my own fridge, there'll never be a shortage of these.
Oh, I'm interested to hear what that is because I don't know. I would say I'm less of a food
Uncrustable.
person. Okay, those are good. Those are good.
Yeah.
So I haven't had one in a hot minute, but I may have to now. I'm less of a food fanatic at this point. It's all about the beverages. So like, I love me a ice cold Gatorade or kombucha or like just like something with some fizz to it. Like, I'm all about that. And even at the time, that was a big thing. There was a Gatorade. What was it called? Gatorade Recovery. I think it had protein in it. It had a weird chalky taste to it, but I love the way it tasted in a injury wrapped ice bag with the small cubed ice. It tasted nice.
Wait, so that's one thing we didn't dive into. Listeners don't know, you're always drinking kombucha. How do you brew it? Like, how did you get into that? Let's hear the background. I don't remember. You're always like brewing kombucha and we never really talked about it.
I'll make this like a 60 seconds or less because people probably don't care and I could totally go full nerd. So despite my terrible grades in chemistry and in physics, I am quite the scientist when it comes to the kombucha. I just love the way it tasted. I got tired of paying $3 a bottle for 16 ounces of something that I could make myself. So I figured it out. You can learn anything on YouTube and on Google. And so, yeah, basically you take sweet tea and you ferment it with a little organism called a SCOBY, which is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. It eats away the sugar, slowly makes the sweet tea sour. And then at that point, you're ready to add whatever kind of flavorings you want. So let's just call it cherry juice. I'm making cherry kombucha. You cap it for a couple of days. The lack of oxygen creates CO2. You got yourself a nice, sweet, tart, fizzy drink.
Man,
I love that you do that. That's hilarious.
And it's extremely good for you. It's got a bunch of probiotics and prebiotics and microbiomes that, help your gut health. So
how many different flavors do you like brew consistently? Do you have like is it just like what the flavor of the day is and like you just stay on one flavor for like a week, or do you got like an assortment?
No. This is approximately a 14 to 16 day process per batch. So I do 3 gallons at a time. Takes 10 days during the fermentation process, 10 to 12 days, then an additional 4 to 5 days for the carbonation buildup. So I typically do 3 flavors per cycle. So right now I'm on the fall flavors. So I got like a maple flavor. I got a, apple cider type flavor and all that good stuff.
When are we going to see the Jordan kombucha on the shelves of Kroger?
I don't know. There is a strong calling for it in the local Westchester area. People love it. So, and by people, I mean my mom.
How quickly do you go through 3 gallons? So do you start the process immediately after to get the next?
Oh yeah.
Going like, so that like, how long's 3 gallons last? And does your kids and your wife consume all this too? Is it you give it out as like Christmas gift, or these like party favors? Like what's the
3 gallons on continuous cycle now for close to 2 years. I drink it, my wife drinks it, my child gets it in limited portions, but 3 gallons basically lasts us between cycles. So with a little additional, safety stock for guests.
So 3 gallons every 2 weeks or so.
Yep.
Okay. It's a lot of kombucha right there.
It's about a 12-ounce glass per day.
I went to a market this weekend and this lady was selling kombucha and I thought about you. I'm not like the biggest fan. I want to like it because for the health reasons, but I just don't enjoy it. So I just go and I have like the little tasters and I'm like, ooh, and then I'll buy like a 60-ounce one and drink like 3 sips and then end up throwing it away. I think I have 2 full ones in my fridge that I haven't drank for 3 months. Probably bad. Wait, kombucha go bad?
Store-bought stuff will last a while.
Gotcha. There's a lot of preservatives, I'm guessing.
No, once it's capped, it's good to go.
Oh, once it's capped. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get you on some of my brew next time you're in town.
What's the real estate? How much space? Because you get like brew kits for beer that take like half a garage could be taken up with all the stuff. But I imagine the kombucha station is smaller. Is that true?
So this is kind of weird, but we rented our bathroom in Savannah. IKEA. Was it IKEA? Wayfair. Terrible company. Not sponsored by them this episode. They sent us 3 cabinets in a row that were cracked. So I took one of them, cut the top out, and I lined it with, like insulation. And that's where they brew in there. I got a little chicken coop lamp on the top so it keeps it temperature regulated. It's a redneck operation, but it works great.
That is awesome.
You have to take some pictures and send them this. I'm going to tag in the social media post. Before we get off, because we got to hit on this topic, Jordan, Thome, and CrossFit. a lot of listeners don't realize how big of a CrossFit fan you really are. And I know you try to downplay it. What was the workout today? I know you're not going to
I
work.
have no idea. I've been slacking, man.
What?
I've been slacking. Kroger's demanding a lot out of me, so.
I don't buy that. You got a pretty sweet basement gym going on that you don't send anything to anybody other than when you put it we'll put a workout out there and then you'll just try to show me up in the group text.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what the workout is. I like CrossFit. I think it's fun. I think it's a perfect healthy activity for wrestlers as far as things we're good at and type of mentality we have. But yeah, I'm slacking, man. I gotta get back to it.
You know what? Combining all of the good things in the world, 1, CrossFit, 2, Army Wrestling, 3, JT's Kombucha, Rendezvous in Madison, July 2022, Army Wrestling reunion, JT Kombucha, support Chandler Smith, winning the CrossFit Games.
Hey, you know what? If we can get him to commit on air or social media to having JT Kombucha on his shorts, or you know what? Even better, tattoo it on his skin, right? That'd be great. Then I'll go live.
we could have a legit kombucha vendor store like at Madison. Everybody would go. You could sell so much kombucha there just because everybody would go to the stand because it's sponsored and endorsed by Chandler. This is a legit idea. I want in.
We got some serious
the group text going.
Talk to as far as production and bottling after this, but we'll table that for all fair.
Well, I'm sure by then you'll be able to automate this process and you'll just have like a whole shelving unit of broken IKEA furniture with a robot pulling kombucha flavors off the shelf and delivering it, like putting on like a little Roomba, a little,
Oh man.
There's a lot of potential here.
There is. It's yeah. We'll just end the episode saying that my kombucha career it ended better than my senior year of wrestling. So life's good.
Awesome. Well, before we head out, we ask every listener, who do you want to hear on the show going forward? Let's get 3 recommendations.
Oof. Great question. I'm going to go ahead and to use an Army term, take a nice 20-second tactical pause to think about it. Colonel Tom Cook, retired. That's a must.
Tank hard.
I'd like to hear Coach Ryan Woolman, maybe, if that can set up.
Wait, who was I talking to the other day? Somebody I was talking to the other day was like, you need to get Willman on. Who was I talking to?
When you mentioned JT hitting the high crotch, the rare but special occasion, I thought of Willman. I was like, Willman, he also probably hit the rare high C.
Yeah. Me and Willman had a special bond as far as wrestling style. So yeah, Willman would be good. I'd like to get some stories out of him from the Fila Akron trip on air. That'd be good. And number 3, Ryan Bergen. I love Ryan Bergen. I looked up to him when he was a Firstie and I was a plebe. I remember when he got injured in combat. That was impactful on me. And just honestly, not from a wrestling standpoint, dude was a stud, but he was a great person and a great man. So I'd like to hear from him.
Awesome. All of them. I haven't talked to Woolman about it. I've tried to get Tom Cook on. Shots fired. He was really adamant not to come on the show.
Sabo's fired. Get him in here.
We need to just sabotage. Like, I'll get him on. Like, I'll just send him a Zoom link, and he won't know it's an episode, and we'll record the first 20 seconds before he hangs up and just post it live and just say, hey. Sorry.
Are you coming up for the golf thing? Is it next weekend or the weekend after? Next weekend. I'm not, unfortunately. You could go dismounted and just do live recordings, and instead of streaming, you just go straight live interview around on a golf cart.
Oh, you don't want to see it, like there. You shouldn't have footage of Tom.
You don't
Cook.
want TC on a golf course.
No, he takes it very seriously, extremely seriously, and he's not good enough to take it as seriously as he does. Shots fired. He's not a bad golfer. But it's like he's on the pro tour out there. It is quite entertaining.
Not surprised. No surprise.
Especially when we're playing with like Nick Gist and Kevin Ward, who like shoot in like the mid 70s. So
yeah, they're crazy.
Yeah. But appreciate you coming on, man. We kept it about an hour. So it's pretty good length. I know it's a little long for Jordan. Jordan likes to keep him at the sweet spot, like 45, 50 minutes. But
appreciate the flattering surprise. It's good to get on BHAW. I know I've been distanced, but love Army Wrestling. Love everything that it stands for. Definitely love everything that it's done for my life and the way that it's positively impacted myself, my brother, our family, all the great people we've met, you guys and everybody else. So love Army Wrestling. Love BHAW. Beat everybody. Be happy. Life is good.
Awesome. Appreciate you coming on.
See you guys.
See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the BHAW Radio Show. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. If there's something you'd like to hear on a future show, reach out to us on any of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you can reach us at email, bhaw.radio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, go Army, be Navy.